You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's McGuire Mondays with Dan and Pierre McGuire. And Pierre, if you can just let the ambiance breathe a little, because Pierre is in Ireland. Oh, and the music stops as soon as I wanted that to happen. Pierre, what the hell are you doing in Ireland?
I'm here to cover the Friendship 4, Dan. It's so nice to visit with you from your home country. I know you're a proud Canadian like I am, but nonetheless, O'Toole, McGuire, we have a feeling and an affinity for this great island called Ireland. And I'm here to cover the Friendship 4, Harvard, Boston University, Merrimack College, Notre Dame are here to play a hockey tournament in Belfast. And it's the home of the Belfast Giants. All the games are sold out. Can't wait to get up there, but right now I'm in Dublin. I'm at a place called the Harry Lemon. It is a spectacular place, unbelievable place.
And very welcoming, and you could probably tell them, I want to take over the entire bar and close it down to do a podcast. They'd say, no problem.
100%, Dan, they would. That's where I am right now. I'm upstairs on a perch overlooking the first floor of the pub. And Michael, who's the manager here, he has been so unbelievable to deal with. We set this up. My daughter lives and works, so I got to be transparent. She lives and works in Dublin right now. She's been here for almost 2 years. She works for a financial entity here. And she comes here. And she said, Dad, you should do one of your podcasts from here. So I took her to her word. And I'm telling you, I'm so glad I did, Dan. Everybody's been amazingly gracious. Really grateful.
I always think back to a story that my mom told me. The last time she was in Ireland, they were asking someone out on the road how to get somewhere. The person was in their car. They stopped, held up traffic to tell them where to go and how to find their way there, and not a single person behind them honked. Not a single person was perturbed.
You know, Dan, I don't think you're BSing. I know that to be true, not from your mother's story, but from living or coming around here because my daughter lives here. Last year I was here at Christmas time with my wife because it was the first Christmas our daughter was in Canada. And we spent a lot of time with her over here during that Christmas week. And I couldn't believe the outpouring in all the different communities. We traveled around. We went to the Dingle Peninsula. We went over to Killarney. We went down to Cork. We were up north a little bit. And everybody was the same. So I'm just grateful to be here. And Dan, I'm really happy to be able to talk to you today.
Is hockey making an impact there?
It is, especially socially, Dan. Up north, it's the only sport in Belfast where it doesn't matter whether you're on one side of the ledger or the other, you're a hockey player. And it's one of the reasons why the Belfast Giants have grown exponentially. They're the professional team in Belfast. The arena is beautiful. And the people that I know here are trying to utilize hockey as a cause for good in society, not just to make money with it, as a cause for good. And so far up in Belfast, it seems to be working.
Any former NHLers playing for the Belfast Giants? I'm pulling up their lineup right now.
I don't believe that former NHLers are, but Sheldon Keefe's brother is the coach of the Belfast Giants.
Okay. And didn't Theo Fleury play for them once?
Well, I know one of their owners was Owen Nolan back in the...
yes. Okay. Now it's all making sense. And do they have a favorite NHL team? Would it be the Toronto Maple Leafs because they wear the St. Pat's green jerseys around St. Patrick's Day?
I think there are a lot of expats here, and they're probably spread out in terms of their support. But the one thing I would say is Scott Malkin, who's the owner of the New York Islanders, and John Ledecky, his partner, they spend a lot of time around Ireland, and they own a huge shopping village here called Kildare Village. And the Islanders have actually made a pretty substantial impact on Irish hockey, believe it or not, Dan.
Well, it'd be a good time to be a Leaf fan right now because without Auston Matthews, the Toronto Maple Leafs are playing their best hockey of the season.
They really are. They're 7-1 with Auston out of the lineup. Blown away. I actually watched the game this morning when I landed, Dan. Mitchell Marner and the way he's playing, Johnny Tavares, and the way I talked to Julie about this last week, the way Johnny Tavares is playing is great, and the way Craig Berube is coaching, Dan, and I think you would agree, the Leafs might be just a little bit improved point-wise from last year, but they're playing a totally different style, Dan, and it's a style that allows you to win in a lot of tight games.
This is something that happens with teams. Your best player is out with injury, and the team comes together. Is there a fear that when he comes back, this is all going to fall apart?
I don't think so, because they're a captive audience, Dan. You think back to the last, let's say ever since Auston and Mitchell have been together in Toronto, it's been disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. And at some point, you get tired of being disappointed. And I think for those guys, it's getting them to get everybody to buy in. And that's why I think they went out and got Craig Berube. I really like the makings of his staff. I think they've really improved on the power play. Their penalty killing's clearly improved. They identified the need not to have the slickest players, but adding players like Christopher Tanev in particular. I think they're a much better team. I think they're better coached, and I think they're better prepared to play in playoff-style hockey games.
And I mentioned this last week. I don't know if it was with you or with Bruce, but I said it looks like for the first time in forever, there might be a hint of joy in the Leafs room.
It wasn't with me, but I haven't been around their room this year, but I've watched all their games. And what's amazing to me is the power play struggled and struggled and struggled. And all of a sudden it started to wake up. They weren't very good in a lot of defensive situations for all those years. And all of a sudden now they're starting to block shots. They're starting to be really elite at doing that. They're taking away time and space in the neutral zone. They're a quick counter team off of turnovers. Dan, this is all tied into the impact that Craig Berube's making on this team. I've always been a believer, Dan, over an 82-game schedule, a coach has to make a difference in 10 games. 10 games is 20 points. If a coach makes a difference because of decision-making in 10 games, that's 20 points in the standings. That's probably enough to get you into the playoffs. I think Craig Berube's already made a difference in 12 games. And we're, at the 22-game mark?
12 already out of 22. Now,
Yep.
How did you determine that?
Just watching some of the decisions with players, watching the adjustments on the neutral zone play, watching the shot blocking mechanisms that are definitely apparent, the way he's handled Mitchell Marner in different situations. You look at everything. I'm going to say 12 out of the 22 games, the coaching decisions have made an impact.
Well, he is also loosening up. I saw in the pregame before the Utah game, and he was asked about putting the Nylander brothers together on a line. He says, well, I've been asked enough, so I might have to succumb to peer pressure. So I'm like, okay, he is feeling at home now. He can finally loosen the tie a little.
I don't think he'll be doing that anytime soon. Scotty Bowman had one of the best lines I ever heard, Dan, and it was about the media. And he said, they can't help you when you're losing, and you don't need them when you're winning. And you know what? Craig Berube would be wise to follow that. He doesn't need guys sitting in the press box telling him how to coach the team.
Yeah, true. But how many times do two brothers get to play on the same team together? And my headspace the entire game was, are they pinching themselves? Are they going through the mental Rolodex saying, how the hell did we get here to this time right now? Two brothers on the same team in the National Hockey League.
Well, I think it's really a cool story, honestly, I do. And I want to be totally transparent with you. I had the honor and privilege of coaching their father when he broke into the National Hockey League. I coached Michael in Hartford. I also was part of trading Michael away. But I really respected Michael as a player. He was an amazingly talented player. So I've known the father for, close to 30 years. And to see where his boys are now is pretty impressive. And it's a good story. It's a very, very good story.
So was this pre-kids that you had Michael Nylander?
Yes. Yeah, it was pre-kids.
So you didn't get to see the road hockey development and and say those kids are going to be in the NHL one day?
No, I did not. Michael will tell you I liked him very much, but I was also pretty hard on him. And that's okay. Coaches aren't, it's not a popularity contest. But I'm a big fan of the way he played, and I'm a huge fan of what his boys are doing right now. I think it's a great story.
Michael Nylander in the Hartford Whalers era, he only played one season there with you? Oh, no, two.
Two
we seasons.
Halfway through the second.
Yeah. So, okay, he played 59 games the one season, 58 games, 11 goals both years. Oh, man, the Hartford Whalers. What a time to be alive. Was Mike Liut your goalie?
No, he was not. Sean Burke was.
Oh, right. We've gone through this before.
Yeah,
okay.
Sean Burke was, and Mike Leonarduzzi was, and Mario Gosselin was, and Frankie Pietrangelo was. We had a lot of goalies.
You had Mario Gosselin?
I had Mario Gosselin, one of the nicest men I've ever met in hockey. Very nice man.
Former Quebec Nordique.
Yep.
Speaking of goalies, Joseph Woll, there's no injuries.
No.
He's playing with confidence, playing his best hockey of the year.
How about, Dan, you've been around it so long. How about how good the Leaf goaltending situation is right now with Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz? I remember doing our first show together with Julie, you and I, talking about, I think, the number one free agent steal from the summer was Anthony Stolarz. Remember talking about that with you guys. And he's been amazing. But I didn't think Joseph Woll, who I've watched for a long time, especially when he was at Boston College, I never thought he'd be able to play through all this stuff without injury like he is right now. It's really impressive. I don't think goaltending is going to be the problem for Toronto. If there's any problem at all, it's going to be injuries. I firmly believe in all of my years, and I was old enough to be there and remember the 67 Stanley Cup. I was 6 years old, turning 7. This is probably the best rendition of the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of believing they have a chance to win the Cup that I've seen since 67.
Okay, let me get this straight. In all those years, since 67, this version of the Leafs is your best Cup contender you've ever seen.
And I'll tell you why. I think the goaltending is deep. I think that they've addressed the needs on defense, especially the impact matchup needs. And I think eventually they're going to grow their brand with their depth players because they have more than enough ammunition to do that. And you see the way a player like Fraser Minton comes into it. I can't wait to watch Easton Cowan play in the World Junior. The future for this team is amazingly bright. And who knows, maybe an Easton Cowan comes in and helps them in the playoffs. But look at the impact Fraser Minton's already had. And when you get Auston Matthews back and healthy and the pride and the professionalism that Mitchell Marner's playing with, I've never been more excited about the Leafs team.
Dougie Gilmore teams, Curtis Joseph teams, Felix Potvin teams.
Coached against all those teams. Coached against all of them. I coached against the great Pat Burns and the great Pat Quinn. Respect for both of them. Both of them were friends and guys I respected. Their rosters weren't as good as this roster, I don't think.
Well, they're playing with I don't think you could possibly have more injured forwards than they have right now. Yep. So the fact that they're playing this well with a depleted, taped together lineup has to be something that boosts the confidence.
Oh, I think, first of all, General Manager Brad Treliving deserves some credit here. I think the staff around him deserves some credit. I think hiring Craig Berube was really smart. I said it when he got hired, so I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking it. I really like his staff a lot. Adding Lane Lambert was huge. I've always been bullish on Mike Van Ryan. I just think there's a lot of good stuff setting up for Toronto right now. A lot of good stuff.
Okay, well, this is all good news. And then Auston Matthews, he's now skating, so it looks like he's close to returning to the lineup.
That's great news, Dan. As you know, impact players matter a lot. I had the privilege of working with a player by the name of Mario Lemieux back in the 1990s in Pittsburgh. And the one thing I've always told people is you don't coach players like that, you maintain them. And I think Craig Berube understands that concept. Players like that never take away their creativity or their explosive athleticism. Just maintain them. Make sure they're in shape. They're like a Ferrari. gas in the tank, air in the tires, make sure the fluid levels are topped off, and the paint job is crisp and clean, and turn it loose. And I think with those types of players, Berube understands that.
Maybe it was a different era. Well, obviously it was a different era when Mario played to now. Because I've talked to guys who played against Mario, and they said, I'm afraid to admit this, but sometimes when they were on the ice against him, they'd be caught looking at him, and then, oh yeah, shit, I'm playing out here. He had that kind of aura that is, I don't know if it's ever going to happen again in the NHL. Maybe with a Connor McDavid.
Well, they're different. I was with Mario a few days this past summer, and we were talking about Connor McDavid. He says, Pierre, I've never seen a player move as fast as he does and handle the puck as effortlessly as he does and be as creative as he is. That's from Mario. That's almost verbatim. Here's what I feel very comfortable telling you about Mario. I interviewed Auston Matthews probably around 7 or 8 years ago at an outdoor game, and I said, Auston, you have a Mario Lemieux cool to your game. Where did that come from? And Mario saw me about 2 weeks later, and he says, I thought that was so cool that you compared a left-handed shot to a right-handed shot, and that you did it with one of the young superstars. I said, thanks, Ace. Mario's nickname is Ace. I said, thanks, Ace. Appreciate that. And he said to me this summer, he said, Auston Matthews is spectacular. That's from Mario Lemieux. He said he's spectacular.
If you hear Auston Matthews, a Connor McDavid, a Mario Lemieux, all in interviews, all the great players seem to be operating at a barely alive heart level. Their heart rate, there's no excitement in their voices, and that translates into being able to slow the play down on the ice. Because I always think back to the Mario assist where he didn't even touch the puck at the Salt Lake Olympics, where he let the
Olympics through his legs. Paul
through his legs.
100%.
The play to him, it looked like it was in slow motion, but that was in real time. The wherewithal to do that. The Connor McDavid goal from the other night against the Rangers,
yes,
where he slowly waited to everyone to slide out of his way. It's like they're playing a different game. The pace they slow it down to, which is their pace.
It's amazing. They're so comfortable with the puck in their stick. I completely agree. That's so well said by you, Dan. The one thing I'd say about Mario, games were great, and obviously I had a good seat to watch a lot of great games that he played, Dan. There were some practices that I watched him in. Dan, you would have been blown away. If we would have taped practices back then like they do now, and we put some of that stuff on tape and put it out for the public to see, I think they would have been blown away. I've had players, Hall of Fame players, come up to me and say, I can't believe how good he was today. Like, he was just unbelievably overbearing. He was so good.
The Pittsburgh area has a lot of hills. They could erect a Pittsburgh Penguins Mount Rushmore and easily fill that, because what a franchise with, you've got Lemieux, Jagr, Crosby, Malkin. That's pretty damn good for a fan base.
Can we just take drafted Penguins, or can we take guys that have been traded there too? There have been some good ones. Paul Coffey's not a bad player. Larry Murphy's not a bad player. Joey Mullen wasn't a bad player. Kevin Stevens was pretty darn good. That Mark Recchi kid was pretty good. I mean, you start looking at some of the guys that have been through that program. It's pretty amazing, Dan. It's pretty amazing.
And then just to ruffle some feathers, throw in Tom Barrasso.
We'll throw in Tommy for sure. You know what? I'll tell you one thing. You talk about money goaltender. Back in those days, in 91 and 92, Tommy was money. He was money for all of us. Not just for him. He was money for all of us. He was good.
I want to quickly touch upon Jim Montgomery. I said this with Bruce. I said he's not going to be out of a job for long. He was out of a job for 5 days. Yeah. He goes back to St. Louis, where he was an assistant coach. And not only does he go back there, but I don't know how many coaches have been signed to a 5-year deal, but that's what he got.
Yeah, he's moving back to the house where he spends most of his summers. His wife is a native St. Louis person, And he's going to a general manager that he knows, respects him very well, knows exactly the roster that he's getting. The players, a lot of them are very familiar with him. He's a great developer of young talent. It's a great hire for the St. Louis Blues. The painful part of this whole thing for me is with Drew Bannister, the former coach of the St. Louis Blues. Honorable man, very good player. When he played in Sault Ste. Marie, I scouted him forever. He was a very successful minor league coach, and I hate to see that happen to anybody. That's really an unfortunate and a dirty part of our business. But I'm really happy for Jimmy, and I think Jimmy will do a great job there. Dan, I got to tell you this. When Jimmy was a Tier 2 junior player with the Pembroke Lumber Kings up in just north of Ottawa, I tried to recruit him to play for me at St. Lawrence. He went on to Maine, played at University of Maine, where he's a captain of a national championship team. I've always been a big fan. I knew his late father very well, and I'm really happy for Jimmy. Thrilled to death for him.
If Jim Montgomery wasn't let go by the Bruins, does Bannister still have his job? Was he let go in order to get the available Jim Montgomery?
I can't answer that, and I would never try to pretend to know whether I knew it or not. Here's the one guy that I think is out there that I'm surprised hasn't been hired yet, and that's Joel Quenneville. And he obviously had a history with St. Louis as well. But I have to think that a lot of coaches in the NHL, when Montgomery became available, I think guys looked over their shoulder. But now I would say, now that Drew has been replaced in St. Louis by Jimmy, I wouldn't be surprised to see Joel Quenneville resurface sooner rather than later.
Have the Boston Bruins maybe sensed something here? If you look at the list of their coaches they fired, all with Jack Adams awards, they get hired days later. Are they actually having the insight to say, there's a common denominator here, and it seems to be us?
I don't know about that. I just know Boston is an amazing hockey market. The Bruins are an awesome brand. I think I know a lot of guys that have coached there. I've coached against the Bruins for years and years and years. It's a pretty impressive place to be if you can get that job. It's a hard place to coach, though.
It's a good launching pad to getting a great record of Jack Adams, and then a quick second coaching gig after that.
Exactly. I think people know what you have to go through to be the coach of the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I would not wish it upon anyone. St. Louis is a bit more low-key, I think. Pierre, we hope you have a great time in Ireland. I hope you get us lots of souvenirs, and we can wear them next week here.
I can't wait, Dan. Great to visit with you. Thank you very much. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.